Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Good morning. Weather's finally tolerable. So happy. We'll get to do some walking meditation outside for once. Maybe not today, but eventually. All right, so we're going to continue our talk on the 5 jhana factors. On our last class, we discussed the first 2, applied attention and sustained attention. So just to quickly give a recap, applied attention is the initial ability to place attention onto our object of meditation. So in the very first type of concentration, momentary concentration, we're using anapanasati. Anapanasati is the mindfulness of breathing. So anapana means in and out breathing. Sati means mindfulness. So it's a mindfulness of breathing. And so our entire object of meditation is going to be our breath. More specifically, the anapana spot. The spot between your upper lip and your nostrils is called anapana spot. So this is the area where we're going to hold and maintain our object of concentration. So as you're breathing in and out, you're essentially only following the sensation of the breath or the air in this anapana spot. So if you remember some of the exercises in the Anapana Sutta, that says that as you breathe in, I know that I'm breathing in. As I breathe out, I know I'm breathing out. I breathe in a short breath, I know I'm breathing in a short breath. Breathe out a short breath, I know I'm breathing out a short breath. Breathe in a long breath, out a long breath, etc. Right? So you're essentially just doing that. You're being aware of the sensation of the breath. How are you breathing? Is it short? Is it long? Is it heavy? Is it coarse? Is it gentle? Is it very subtle? Right? So you're just making mental notes of the sensation of the breathing in the anapana spot. And so then when we get to the factors, the applied attention is the ability to continuously bring back our attention to the anapana spot. So whenever we get distracted or our thoughts arise or whatnot, we're continuously bringing it back. We're continuously bringing back our awareness back to the object of meditation, which is the anapana spot. So that's what's called applied attention, because you're continually applying attention back to the anapana spot. The sustained attention or concentration is when you're able to maintain and hold that concentration at the anapana spot for a long period of time. Generally, for me, I would say if you're able to hold it for at least 30 minutes with no distractions that's able to take you away, right? Because you'll still have some subtle, wispy distractions kind of in the background, right? But they won't be strong enough to take hold of your object of meditation, right? So even if you're able to maintain your object meditation at the anapana spot and you have distractions and feelings and sensations arise, as long as they don't take over, right, you're still in sustained concentration. You move back to applied concentration if the distraction does take over, and you have to continuously apply your object of meditation back into focus, right? But once you're able to hold the object of meditation for a longer period of time, let's say between 15 and 30 minutes, then you can say, I'm in a sustained concentration mode. And then we get to third, and hopefully maybe the fourth factor today, but I won't cross my fingers for that. But we get to the third factor of joy, piti, which can also be translated sometimes as rapture or happiness or excitement. So joy here, or piti, is a joy that arises without any specific cause, without any input from any external source, right? It's a mentally induced happiness, but it's felt in the body. So as you maintain and sit for meditation for quite some time, and you're becoming very concentrated, you're becoming very focused, you start to, as we get deeper into the factors, your senses in the body tend to also lessen or weaken. And so once you have strong enough concentration, you may feel like You're weightless. You may feel like you're floating, right? You hear stories of meditators levitating. It's not physical levitation, but they feel as if they're levitating because their body is so at peace and so calm and content. And so you may feel that kind of weightlessness. You may feel this kind of just joy in the body, right? And there's no external source for this joy. You're having these pleasurable sensations in the body. And so when we get to that point, right, these are, as long as you're in the sustained concentration piece, again, for at least 15 to 30 minutes, that's usually the range where the pleasurable sensations of the body arises. And for most people, that at least in my own experience, the first place where this pleasurable sensation arises is in the hands. So as I'm sitting in meditation, my hands are on top of each other. This is where I can feel that pleasurable sensation. And then it escalates into feeling like my hands are over here. I don't know why. Like my left hand's on the right side and my right hand's on the left side. And then eventually the weightlessness feeling arises, where you don't feel the sensations of the body. You don't feel the pressure of sitting on the seat. You don't feel any physical pain, right, or mental pain or anything like that. And so once you're able to maintain concentration and you're starting to develop that pleasurable feeling, you do eventually want to shift your object of attention from the breathing to that pleasurable feeling. Okay? But again, your concentration has to be strong enough in order to do that. Because if you start to shift your attention to that pleasurable feeling, the pleasurable feeling at first may not last very long, or may even disappear altogether once you shift your attention. It's just fine, right? You simply just go back to your object of meditation, of your breathing, and wait for the sensation to arise. And at first, I would recommend that you don't pay too much attention to it. Just let the sensation grow on its own, kind of in the background, right? You're aware of it, but you're not focusing on it, right? You're still focusing on your breathing. And then that pleasurable sensation just kind of grows. And once it's grown enough where you can really feel it pretty strongly, then you can shift your attention to that pleasurable feeling and hold on to it. You're not making it your object of meditation. You're simply just being aware of the pleasurable feeling. And you're letting it grow on its own. It'll naturally just kind of have this is why some of the translations say rapture, right? Or excitement, or ecstasy, or euphoria, because your whole body just feels like you're on this high almost, right? And it can grow and grow and grow, right? It may not happen all at once, but eventually it'll grow where it then even it can turn into restlessness, right? Which is one of the hindrances. Because there's so much energy, there's so much excitement in the body that your body just naturally becomes excited, right? It naturally becomes restless. So you may find yourself shifting a lot, or moving, or trying to adjust yourself. This is perfectly fine. For a lot of people, this is actually kind of a good thing because it keeps them in that mindset of meditation, right? But again, it'll pass, right? You have to get it to its peak in order for you to emerge from that excitement, and then it'll churn into bliss, right? Sukha. Sukha is opposite of dukkha. Dukkha is what? Suffering, right? So sukha is opposite. It's happiness or bliss. And so when piti gets to its peak, right, and you're feeling that piti, think of piti like a flashlight, right? When you turn on a flashlight, the whole room lights up, right? And so when you get to that peak of piti, you can see this giant array of flash. But once it's at its peak and you've surpassed that peak and you get to bliss, then your concentration becomes laser-like, pointed, right? So instead of this giant area of excitement and happiness and bodily and mental bliss of the flashlight, now you're a laser. If that makes sense. Maybe not. But it just means that instead of feeling the joy and excitement in the entire body, right? Because that's piti. Piti is the physical pleasure, whereas sukha is a mental pleasure. So instead of your entire body feeling excited, now it's just in your mind. Your mind feels calm. It's a subtle form of contentment, right? And so you'll almost always be able to sense that shift, right? Imagine joy and bliss being two pendulums, right? So if you hold them up and let them go, they're going to switch around, right? And so they're not in sync yet. But eventually, when they start to slow down, they start to be in sync, right? So there's once it starts being in sync, it's like almost as if they were to snap together and move around, right? And so shifting from joy to bliss is kind of like that same snap, right? You feel this entire bodily joy and excitement, and it just all of a sudden just snaps into place where only the mental enjoyment of the meditation comes into place. Make sense? I think? I hope. And so we don't worry too much about finding that physical pleasure in piti, in joy, right? You don't want to have the mindset of, I have to get there, right? Because then that just becomes a hindrance, right? But we can say that in the second, types of concentration, axis concentration, right? Once all the factors are kind of together and aligned, and you enter this axis concentration, because axis concentration is what? It's just the ability to hold and maintain your concentration on the meditation object for the entirety of the remaining of your meditation practice. And so when we get to the later factors, or the higher factors, joy and bliss, we will start to, what's a good word? You'll start to notice that the mind and body kind of start to be in sync together, right? Because again, when you're at joy, this is the bodily, hopefully you get to the bodily pleasurable feelings, right? And again, this is where the senses, your physical senses kind of start to disappear a little bit, all right? First, it's always the bodily sensation that leaves first, the touch. So you'll notice that you won't notice your hands touching together, or you sitting on the ground or on the chair or whatever. Those sensations are the first ones that kind of leave. Then after a while, you'll notice other senses leaving. You'll start to be able to drown out any background noise, right? There could be a car crash right outside the door and you wouldn't even notice it. Or you may notice it, but it doesn't take you away from your meditation, right? And so these are some of the subtle signs that you're getting deeper and deeper into the concentration, into your meditation. And then another good sign is as you are still in anapanasati, right, before you make the shift to the pleasurable sensation of the body, if you even make that shift. But another good sign is the subtlety in the breath. So you'll notice that your breathing starts to become very slow and shallow, maybe even non-existent sometimes, right? A lot of times, not a lot of times, but in some of the cases that I've heard from people, they kind of almost freak out. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm not breathing. Let me take a giant breath in and revive my body. Don't do that. Right? Your body is on autopilot and knows what to do. So if you're not breathing enough, your body knows it. So it'll just naturally fix itself, right? Or attune itself back to normal. So don't think that you've stopped breathing or that's a bad thing. It's not. Just it's a good sign that you're in strong concentration. And so instead of thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not breathing, let me take a deep breath and sigh, just what you can do in that moment is attempt to shift your attention to something else temporarily until you're able to go back to your breathing, right? Especially the first couple times where that happens, where you notice the breathing is almost stopped, right? It's almost kind of like a freak out moment and you don't know what to do. So just shift your attention to something else for a few seconds and then go back to the breath. And allow your breath to continue and become more subtle, more shallow. And then at that point, usually that comes first before any pleasurable sensation arises. And so if you at least be able to sit and meditate and notice the breathing becoming very shallow and quiet and calm, then you know you're halfway there. And then the pleasurable sensation it's on its way. Another thing that can happen during meditation is the arise of nimitta. Nimitta is this kind of light that arises in our mind. And a lot of times, unfortunately, people think it's some grand gesture of accomplishment. It's really not. It's just it's a byproduct, it's a side effect of strong concentration. And so if you see this nimitta, this light in your mind, you can, just like the pleasurable feeling, you can eventually shift your attention to that nimitta instead. But the nimitta, like the pleasurable feeling, has to be strong enough first before you make that shift. Because if you make that shift too early while it's still dim and kind of in the distance, it's going to disappear, right? So like the pleasurable feeling, if you see it arising, just be aware that it's there, but don't give it any attention just yet. Let it naturally grow until it kind of overtakes your entire visual field in your mind. And then you can shift your attention to that light. Again, it's no grand aha moment. It's just a sign of really good concentration. And so you can either have the nimitta arise, which is more common, not more common. The pleasurable feelings are more common to arise. But if you have the nimitta or the pleasurable feeling, whichever comes first, and whichever I would say try to experiment with both and see which one allows you to stay in strong enough concentration more, and then kind of use that for future sits, for future practices. But regardless, whatever comes first, you can use that to hold on to your attention until it's strong enough that you can shift your attention. For me, nimitta doesn't arise as often as it usually does for some people. For me, it's always the pleasurable feeling arises. It's always in the hands, always. But if you don't use anapanasati for your object of meditation, the breathing, if you use, like to say, if you're doing metta meditation, loving kindness meditation, right? Oftentimes, if you're using metta as your object of meditation, then the pleasurable feeling arises may be somewhere in the heart area, right? Because metta is just that. It's loving kindness. It's extending loving kindness and joy and compassion to all living beings. So naturally, we would feel pleasure kind of in the chest, the heart area. And so it kind of depends on also what you're meditating on to where it would may direct or shift different places in the body for the pleasurable feeling to arise. But regardless, you can just, wherever it arises, it could be in your feet, it could be in the backbone, it could be your tongue, I don't know, right? But whatever arises, whatever feels pleasurable and comfortable, use that, right? Focus on that. Don't give it too much attention just yet, but just be aware that it's there until it's strong enough where it really just kind of takes over your whole body. And you'll feel this piti. Sometimes it may not happen at first, but eventually it becomes almost overwhelming. It can become so overwhelming that you kind of feel like you're shaking or your body's vibrating, right? Because there's so much of this happiness energy that's going on in the body, which isn't a bad thing, right? But you can, if it's strong enough, right? That when you emerge and get out of meditation, you can still feel your body vibrate with that piti energy, even after the meditation. And sometimes it will last for hours, right? And so after meditation, you're restless. You just want to do something. You want to work. You want to move. You want to, do all these different things, right? For another couple of hours until that energy starts to wane and lessen, and then it'll go away. So just keep in mind, watch how your mind works. Watch how the body works when you're in meditation. There's always these subtle signs, right? I always hear people saying that they're having trouble with meditation, or they, that nothing is happening. I'm like, how do you know nothing's happening? Something's always happening. You only think it's not happening because you're not paying attention to it. You're not paying attention to yourself, right? But there's always something happening. Whether they're distractions, whether they are attainments or realizations, there's always something happening. We just have to be diligent in the practice of awareness of how things are happening, or why it's happening even. Okay, almost there. Another good thing about the factors, so remember, the axis concentration is also the axis concentration is where all the 5 hindrances are no longer arising. So the factors are also the antidotes to the hindrances. So as we know, the hindrances are sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness, and doubt, right? So applied concentration will lessen sensual desire. That's the antidote. Sustained is ill will. Pitti. Bliss eliminates restlessness. And one-pointedness eliminates doubt. So when we're in meditation, because the hindrances will arise, right? And so when the hindrances arise, we can also use the factors as antidotes. Because if we are able to concentrate with sufficient concentration, and then applied attention will calm sensual desire, sustained concentration will pacify ill will or aversion, and then joy will vanquish sloth and torpor, bliss will eliminate restlessness, and then one-pointedness will overcome doubt. And so, because in order to achieve axis concentration, we have to eliminate the hindrances. The 5 jhana factors become the antidote to those hindrances. So as we go down the list of the factors during your meditation practice, and you're eliminating each of the hindrances as well, and by the time you get to the last factor, you've eliminated or at least pushed back the hindrances enough in order to continue your meditation. This doesn't mean that you'll vanquish all the hindrances, that they will no longer arise or come. No, they will still arise in the future. But you've suspended them, at least, during your meditation practice. Right? They haven't been completely eradicated yet. Eradication only comes when we are able to fully master axis concentration and get to jhana, right? Which is the higher levels of concentration, meditation. But until then, when we're meditating on the factors, we're at least subduing the hindrances. We're pushing them far away enough, we're pushing them down enough where they are no longer hindrances, right? They no longer allow these hindrances to arise and take over our meditation. So just keep that in mind also. So if you are not sitting in meditation long enough, for instance, right? Because again, 30 minutes should be the very minimum if you're doing serious practice. 30 minutes should be the very minimum of how much or how long you should be meditating in one session. So if you at least have that much time, right, then you can try to practice the axis concentration. But if anything under 30 minutes, where you don't really have enough time for the concentration to fully develop and for the factors to arise completely, then just stick with your regular breathing. And then when any of the hindrances arise, just use the antidote to subdue that hindrance. But knowing the hindrances and their antidotes is going to be important. They're going to be necessary in order to surpass all the factors and all the hindrances to achieve axis concentration. And then once axis concentration is achieved, then we go on to the more serious stuff, which we won't ever get into. But yeah, it's a lot of work. But I guarantee you that it is very much worth it in the end. When you get to the point where everything kind of just snaps together and aligns together and you have those aha moments and those realizations, there's no comparison to anything else in the world. There's such a powerful sense of accomplishment and gratitude that you just don't even want to emerge from meditation, right? If we go back and look at stories of the Buddha's past lives, or even some of the stories of his disciples, a lot of them have, and some of them aren't necessarily stories that we should abide by, because even jhana, right? If we even get into the jhana, any of the jhanas, that itself can become an attachment, and that in itself can become a hindrance, because it's such a blissful, peaceful, content state of mind that nobody wants to emerge from it, right? Why would you want to leave something that's so blissful and go back to the chaotic world, right? Nobody wants that. And so there have been so many stories of Buddha's disciples where they sit and stay in jhana for days, right? They don't emerge from it for days. And this is possible, and it's been even scientifically proven, that when you're in deep meditation, because your breathing is shallow, right, and your activity is almost non-existent, that you're not using so much bodily energy, right? Your metabolism slows down, so there's no need to eat and drink as much as a normal person would, right? And so because of that, you're capable, you have the capability of sitting in meditation for days without eating or drinking or sleeping. Because you're almost in like this suspended animation state. But anyway, but that is also a hindrance in itself, is wanting to stay in this blissful state, right? Because if you go back and remember, there's two types of meditation. Buddhist meditation is samatha, concentration, which is all these. And there's vipassana, the insight meditation, the contemplation. And it's only through the contemplation, the vipassana type of meditation, where enlightenment can be achieved, can be attained. You cannot attain enlightenment via the jhanas. The jhanas only allow you to have extremely strong and sufficient concentration, because you need that strong concentration in order to master vipassana, to go into insight and contemplation. And so a lot of times people mistake, when they enter jhana, they mistake it for enlightenment, because it's so peaceful, so calm. There's nothing going on in the world. There's nothing going on in the mind, right? And so they mistake that for enlightenment. But you cannot achieve enlightenment via concentration. Concentration is simply a tool to get you to where you need to be in order to attain enlightenment. And so we use these practices in order to master Vipassana. And by mastering Vipassana, we can attain enlightenment. So also keep that in mind, that when you see like the nimitta, for instance, that light, right? When it becomes very strong and where it fills your visual senses, right, in your mind, where it kind of takes over your entire visual field, and you've entered this white light, whatever color it is, it's usually white. People may think, oh, this is Nirvana. I've entered the doors of Nirvana. Or Nirvana has come to me, right? This is the light at the end of the tunnel. It's not the light at the end of the tunnel. This is simply the starting line, right? That white light, the access concentration is literally just that. It's in the name, access. It's simply just giving you access through the doors, right? This door is not the final door. This is just the first door, right? Access concentration would be like entering the gates outside. You've entered the gates of the yard, but you haven't entered the gates of the temple yet, right? So you may be there, but you're not really here. Just keep in mind that when anything happens, whether it's the pleasurable feeling, whether it's the nimitta, or anything else that's different or new, right? It's okay to be slightly excited, right? Because it is exciting. But don't allow that excitement to take over, right? Don't allow that excitement to be to let yourself say, oh, what is this? Oh, I like this. This is what I want. I need it more. Or I want more of this. I want this to be bigger. I want this to be stronger. Don't allow those thoughts to arise. Again, you're simply just being aware that the pleasurable feeling or the nimitta is there. You're not paying any attention. You're simply just being aware that it's there. Right? If we're swimming, for instance, right? And we're on the surface and we're breathing, we know the air is there. We know there's oxygen everywhere, right? But we don't pay attention to it. We just know it's there. But when you dive and you're swimming underneath water, and eventually you'll need that oxygen, right? You need to come up for air. So it's the same thing. So the nimitta, or the pleasurable feelings, is the air. You know it's there. You are aware that it's available to you, right? But you don't pay any attention. You don't have to say, I have to breathe, I have to breathe, I have to breathe. No, you just breathe. You only need it when you're underneath the water and you need to come up for air, right? And so now that needing air is equivalent to having the nimitta, or the pleasurable feeling, being very strong, right? And so when it's very strong and you finally do need it, then you arise and you take that breath. Likewise, when the nimitta, or the pleasurable feeling, is very strong, then you arise and allow that to be your object of meditation. I don't know if that was a good example, but it just came to mind. I looked at Leon, I was like, oh, they go swimming. I don't think they swim anymore, but a swimming example just kind of came to me. Okay, I'm stop talking now. Okay, we did get through 2 factors today. 1 more down. We have 2 more classes? Yes. So the last class we'll go over the last factor. The next class we'll go over the last factor, and then the last class we'll do a quick overview. And then our meditation retreat is December 9th. So mark your calendars. December 9th, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's a Saturday. Okay, what are your questions, concerns, emotional outbursts?
That arose when you were talking about entering a state of mind and wanting to remain there through bliss and everything. But then, so I keep thinking about how the Buddha says, that I became enlightened, but then I came back from that back into the real world. We were talking about that. Reached these high
Right.
I feel so good, I'm inspired by these things, I need to share this with somebody, I need to come back. And so it's not going here to some cosmic heaven, it's just you're in a mind state, and then you're not in a mind state.
Right. Right.
It's all happens right here.
Right. Yes. Because even nirvana, enlightenment, is not this grand fireworks show. Right? Enlightenment is it's mentally induced. It is a mental state. It is not something that is physically transformative. Right? It's only physically transformative because it may transform or change the way you act or speak or interact with the world, right? But you don't glow, right? Or grow out wings or whatever, right? And so, but enlightenment is the only that is permanent. We may have enlightenment moments in meditation, right, where you have aha moments, right? But those last for a few seconds, maybe a few minutes, maybe for only the duration of your meditation. But as soon as you emerge from meditation, that aha moment disappears, right? So our goal in meditation is to be able to maintain that aha moment forever, to make it permanent. And so that's why meditation is so useful and why so many people come to meditation, because if you practice long enough, diligently enough, with sufficient practice and discipline, you will have those short aha moments. And so when you have them, you know, oh, this is it. This is working, right? Something is happening, and so you want to go after it more and more and more until it becomes permanent. And so I hope that when people have a meditation practice and are diligent with it and are disciplined, that they have those moments that gives them the power, the encouragement to continue on, right? That's why I tell people, when people ask, why'd you become a monk? I'm like, well, I tried something and it worked and I liked it and I want more of it. Right? I didn't just become a monk for no reason. Something happened. There was a realization that was made. There was an attainment that was achieved, and I wanted more. Right? This is it. This is whatever I'm doing is working, basically. Right? And so, likewise for you, when you achieve these states and when you achieve the goals of each of the factors or the practices, it's achievable, it works, so you go more into it, you dive deeper, you get more advanced. But of course this isn't easy, obviously. But it's also not entirely difficult. It is 100% in your own hands. If you do not give yourself the time, the discipline, the energy to practice diligently and effectively, then you're not doing anything. You won't achieve anything. You won't attain anything. Right? It's like you buying the ingredients to make something, but the ingredients itself doesn't make the food. It's the chopping up all the vegetables and cooking it and putting things together that makes the meal. Just because you have the ingredients doesn't mean the meal is going to be ready. Right? Likewise, just because you meditate doesn't mean you're going to achieve enlightenment. There's the middle stuff, all this, right? So the middle stuff has to be done in order to have the end result. Okay, what else?
One of my challenges is because of my nature, my addictive nature, whatever you want to call it, I really want to keep this pleasure. I really like this pleasure of the feelings. So I have to always be, like you're saying, on guard to catch yourself before you're, reveling.
Addicted to it, yeah. It's one of the, we've kind of, right. But we also grew up in the world where we naturally go for pleasurable things, pleasurable feelings and sensations and objects and places and people and things, right? And so we've grown addicted to these things. And so even in meditation, when those arise, we want more of it. Because our entire lives is going after pleasurable things. And so now that we have one more pleasurable thing, why wouldn't we want to go after that one too? Right? And so, like you said, you really have to keep guard, which is what mindfulness is all about. Mindfulness is the guardian of our mind. And so if mindfulness is applied, when those pleasurable feelings start to emerge and arise and grow, and you can watch yourself correctly, then you'll succeed without the need or desire to having to want it. Just be aware. So when it arises, make the mental note pleasurable.
It's a distraction, just like any other distraction.
Right. Right.
It's a pleasurable distraction.
Yeah. Yes, it's a pleasurable distraction, but it's still a distraction, exactly. So at first, it becomes a distraction. But once the pleasurable feeling or the nimitta, the light arises, right, we get excited, like, ooh, it's happening, something's happening, it's there, right? And it's typically at that moment where most people tend to shift their attention to it and want to hang on to that pleasure, right? But, again, we're only being mindful that it's there, right? You're not giving it any attention, you're just observing that it's there. And once you master the observance and just letting your mind recognize that it's there without going after it, eventually that desire to want it will also disappear. And when the desire to want it disappears, then the pleasurable feeling of the light itself grows, right? But it cannot grow if you have the desire to want it. When you have the desire to want it, it's going to shrink. Right? So you can't have both of them you can't have both full hands, right? Exactly. So one has to be smaller than the other. And so once you see that pleasurable feeling with the nimitta and you have desire for it, the desire grows, the nimitta is going to shrink. But once the desire shrinks, then the nimitta will grow. And once you make that connection, once you realize that and recognize that, and then the nimitta or the pleasurable feeling is strong enough, then you can shift your attention to it, and then give it your attention. But when it first arises, you have to be very mindful of how you're reacting to it. If you're reacting to it in too much excitement, where you want it, leave it alone.
Because the self creeps in. The self goes, oh, I really like this. I
Right.
like this.
Exactly. And there's no self or I in meditation. Excellent. Okay, so I think this will give us enough time to actually do a nice sit. 2 hours sounds good? Yeah, 2 hours? Okay, 30 minutes. Kidding, we'll do 30 minutes. I'll keep the long sessions for the retreat. Right? Yeah. I think our longest session was like an hour, I think, last year. Right? Okay. All right, we'll do your stretches if you need to, and then we'll sit. Happy emergence. Anybody have a pleasurable sensation or nimitta today?
My experience was like stair steps.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in a mind state, and all of a sudden that would dissolve, and it was like back. So it was like a stair step. It just felt rather than something that's like
That works too. That works too.
It's not always like that. I mean, it's just characteristic.
As long as you're going up and not going down, that's all that matters. Whether it's going upstairs or going up a slide or a hill, going up is a good sign. So did I, so it's okay.
Going to the gym, so like muscles, I got a bunch of like stiff muscles, and they just kept.
That's why you got to stretch.
Right near the end, I was able to just all the way.
That's why it's a good thing to stretch before and after working out, and then before meditation. If your body's too uncomfortable, then your meditation is going to be uncomfortable. But at the same time, if your body's too comfortable, then the mind wanders too much and falls asleep. Or at least not become mindfully active. That's right. Gotta find that Goldilocks zone. The middle way. The middle way. Well, continue practicing. I hope, at least, by the time we get to the retreat, because even the retreat, its main theme or topic, I guess, will still be the 5 factors, but we'll go deeper into trying to achieve the full effect into access concentration. So continue to practice to at least achieve that pleasurable sensation or the light nimitta, because that will be the focal point of where we're going to shift from the last factor of one-pointedness and making it into access concentration. Because access concentration is the conclusion of all the factors working together. Because we can go into meditation and only have one or several factors working, right? Because 1 and 2 essentially become 1 on its own. 3 is going to be on its own for quite some time, but then it will merge into the 4th factor of bliss, and that then becomes 1. Then one-pointedness is kind of the conclusion of the prior 4, and then access concentration is the conclusion of all 5 working together. So, if anything, I hope that everyone has achieved at least the sustained attention, concentration. That is at least the goal for a general meditative practice, is to at least be able to sit for 30 minutes and concentrate on your object of meditation with little distraction. And then from there, it will naturally just grow into the other factors. So joy or piti will naturally arise as you continue to practice. It will naturally grow when those pleasurable sensations, when nimittas arise. It will naturally grow. It will naturally become overwhelming, and when it gets to its peak, it will transform into bliss, sukha. And sensation, right? But as it arises, because like anything else, if you throw up in the air, it comes back down, right? So piti here, the overwhelming feeling of this intense physical exhilaration will rise and intensify. Then at its peak, it'll start to move from the body, pleasurable sensations, and then turns into mental sensation, mental pleasure, via bliss or sukha. And so, like I mentioned earlier, it's just like the two pendulums. Eventually it'll come one. Yes?
Joy, bliss, happiness, isn't that our natural state? The idea is we're not trying to get something.
Correct.
We're trying to diminish things that keep us from being in our real natural state.
Correct. Yes. We are naturally joyful, right? Our true nature is already enlightened. It's just fogged by all the defilements of our mind, by all the hindrances, by all the fetters, right? We naturally have a blissful, calm mind, but we're in a world where that just isn't beautiful enough. So we have to distract ourselves with pleasures and entertainment and everything else in the world, right? And so meditation isn't to achieve anything. You're not achieving anything in meditation. You're simply bringing up what you already have, being aware of what's already there. What you're doing is getting rid of all the things that are fogging up that natural state, right? So if you think of like the mirror after you take a shower in your bathroom, right, it's all fogged up. Its natural state of the mirror is clear as crystal, right? You can see your entire reflection with no problem. But when you take a hot shower, it fogs up the mirror, right? That fogginess is like all our defilements, all of our distractions in the world, all our addictions and biases and discriminations, all the fetters is that fog, right? But the natural state of clear mirror is still there, right? We just can't see it yet. And so we can use different tools to clear that mirror. Maybe we'll use that wet towel to try to clear up the fog. And it may clean up a little bit, but there's still streaks and there's still now little fuzzy particles from the towel, right? And then use a different tool. Use your hand to wipe away the mirror. So the hand took away all the little fuzzies, but it's still streaky. And eventually you'll use different tools to clear up the mirror, right? Until it comes to its natural clear state. Likewise, in meditation is the same thing. Enlightenment is already there. You just have to use the tools to clear all that fog. These are the tools. So we're not trying to achieve or get anything from meditation. We are doing the opposite. We're getting rid of our defilements. We're getting rid of our biases, our discriminations, all the fetters, all the hindrances we get rid of. Right? And so there's a quote from the Buddha when someone asked the Buddha, what are you getting? What are you achieving with meditation? What are you attaining? The Buddha replies, I don't get anything from meditation. But instead, I release anxiety. I release my fetters. I release the hindrances. That's why piti and sukha, joy and bliss, these are things that arise out of no cause. There's no cause of this sensation of pleasure and happiness. Because it's already there. You already have it. Right? This is why we always say happiness is not attained by external circumstances. Because anything that's attained externally outside of yourself is impermanent. And as we know, impermanence does not bring happiness. Yes? So, enlightenment and happiness and true happiness is mental, sukha, piti. These are the happiness, these are the joys that arise with no cause, without any causes necessary to bring them. They just naturally arise.
In the Bible, we talk about the peace that passeth all understanding. me, that's just like saying the same thing. Jesus said that, but it's the same thing. It's not a relative, there's no cause and effect there.
Right. Right. Well, I'll get there. You just have to work for it. You got to build your enlightenment house. You have all the tools. You have all the supplies. Now you just have to do it. Don't be lax, as the Buddha says.
We live in this dualistic, materialistic world, and yet we're trying to achieve this state of unification from such a messy place.
Right.
But that's our dilemma. Like, that's just the nature of the world.
Well, that's why the Buddha told us that renunciation is the best path to enlightenment.
Thank you very much for the teaching today.
Yes, thank you. All right. So those are all the questions, and Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. I'll see everyone in the next class. Thank you.